War in Hell, or better yet known as the struggle to illustrate. Picking back up on this piece, well, you haven't seen it before unless you've been following along in the blog posts and you've seen the failings I've had with pouring water effects. But things are different. Today, we're concentrating on the painted backdrop. So let me guide you through the jungle that has fed my hallucinations. It is very important that first one must do their own research. Checking around online, looking at various mushroom clouds and explosions, and finding one that was in the easiest state to illustrate. It is very important that you pick the easy one, I mean best one to suit the scene. Another good idea is to attempt to draw this painting before you commit it to the subject. Kind of sketching around on a piece of paper. I didn't have the skull in mind when I first started to draw, and then it just kind of came out of me. So this is a good way to get some general practice for what lies ahead. You can kind of scale things down. Sometimes you may want to draw things at a little bit of a larger scale and then kind of break them down and see which details still fit. That can be quite the struggle. But yeah, just think of it as running some fundamentals before the big game. Here we go, sport. I don't need these. I thought I would save you some time by first laying down a base coat on this backdrop. Just a nice coat of bright orange, caught or red highlight, just a basic bright orange. And yeah, I laid like 3 or 4 passes down. I'll be doing all kinds of wet blending, so this is going to be my backboard for any paint that gets pulled thin. It's nice to have a source color to work from. You also want to keep checking your position as you're working. Mock things up beforehand. You know, you can see that I have the backdrop attached at ground level, so when I slide it up by the plinth, I can see how much space is being occupied by the model, by the base, and yeah, just kind of marking things out and make sure that I don't block all my intense illustrations with the figure in the foreground. But to really kick things off, I set myself up for success by picking out some Kogan red highlight, olive brown, black, white, and deep yellow. And with a very large brush, I wanted to first establish, you want to roughly render. This goes through various stages, and it's important to work from back to front. So starting with those angular clouds in the background first, that's the ticket to win. So I'm just getting some atmosphere established before the explosions. First wet blending bright orange and olive brown, and I'm doing this in multiple passes. You can see it's roughly rendered on one side, and then as I'm going in and just adding to the saturation, it's not going to all just fall in place as you throw it down. You're making clouds, but you do have to think a little bit. I want a certain amount of heaviness as they trail upwards and more smoke gathers. A little bit of lightness towards the ground because I want the dark model to be standing out. Other various reasons, but there is a bit of control that you want to maintain, even though it looks like you're just stabbing some clouds into the sky. After my clouds have been stabbed upon my canvas, I decided they looked a little too broad. You know, that's another thing. You want to make things appear as though they're in scale. It's a very small model, so having the cloud taper to this thick tube at the bottom just wouldn't do, so I had to pull things off into some thinner wisps by adding more strands to the base. I needed them to be lighter as well, you know, just as I was talking about that lightness, I'm kind of ad-libbing and reading off my script. I'm reminding myself, that's the way it goes. But all that you're seeing are mixtures of olive brown and orange, and after things are wet blended into place, you know, you get that result alla prima. You want to mix and match and just go in and fortify. Of course, you can be wet blending, but you see the layers of detail and of rendering that this passes through. It's very back and forth, just like all other painting, but yeah, you're trying to make a picture come out of nothing. You're doing a good job. And if you're doing a great job, you're also adding more to the hanging texture of the clouds, and you can flip the piece around upside down to suit your stroke, whatever is comfortable. And yes, I did throw a white piece of paper behind this backdrop because the case I attached it to was too reflective and my lamps were shooting back at the camera. Not fun to look at. And now here I go, once again, just sharpening things up. I wanted to add some falling flaming comets to the sky, because why not? It just makes things look more hellish and bizarre, and we are on location after all. But hey, you can see just the gradual sharpening taking place, and still maintaining that lightness as the smoke was less dense near the battlefield. Now it's time to add some more layers. I wanted to remark where Kogan was. I've painted over all the graphite, which I laid down very lightly. And yeah, referring back to the sketch that I made and keeping everything in its perfect place, I began sketching those clouds into play. And I began filling in the clouds with olive brown and orange, the same as the background. You know, this is a very limited amount of colors. But just the olive brown and orange, that's the main focus area to start. The larger movement of the charge moving upward first. You can see how it's essentially, like, I sketched these down and it looked kind of funny. They do look like mushrooms, a mushroom cloud, but it looks like I'm drawing some kind of like hippie forest. But once you have that, the charge, you know, the smoke seems to create the mushroom cloud, and then very quickly the explosive charge runs up through that. Different things happen, but that's the moment I'm trying to capture, so you can see it almost looks like magma bleeding down from the base, the top of the mushroom, right? Yeah, the upper part of the cloud. You can see how I'm guiding things with the light, but maintaining that charge. Yeah, this is all very surreal. Now it's time to get that face into place. The smaller details were carved out with orange, reapplying the facial details and adding to the churning clouds. It took a lot of repositioning here. I would draw the jaw and the skull into place. I wasn't quite happy with it, so things may look as if they're in a bit of a different place from when you started watching, but I haven't changed anything too drastically. You know, this is just the stages. You start with a sketch, you start painting it on. All of these attempts at creating your scene add more ideas with it. Every pass you get a little bit more in practice. Finer orange lines to bring out the roiling texture, and more yellow in the internal top. You can see the gradient taking place, just mixtures of yellow and orange until I finally get up to a pure yellow. Also, I'm lifting up the olive brown that I've used for the cloud. I'm just adding a little bit of white into that. You can see me kind of adding some dimension to these clouds as the flame is internal, and the explosion, that's where the orange is, but you have these kind of oily black puffs, circular shapes coming out. Yeah, I want to highlight those up and kind of gray them out slightly. And this is a second dimension to work with. I know we're working on in a very flat space and trying to create a 3D model, but just consider the dimension of these clouds. You know, as they reach a certain depth and proximity towards that explosion, that's when the orange takes over, and as it's further away covering, then you want to start highlighting those clouds up with a little bit of gray. So brighten the crevices and brighter on top. That's easy, right? Just highlight in both directions. Seeing is believing, though. And then it was time for those final white touches. My God, this was a lot of fun to work on, and I'm just taking a victory lap. It was, you know, just going and polishing everything. You jump back and forth between the steps, but I was really happy with this one. It was exciting for me to be working on it. You know, it just looks so good. I made sure to take my time, and like the colors just came out so vibrant. I think it was having that solid orange base coat that really helped me out. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I get to put this together now once the resin water effects are dry. I'll have a little write-up on my blog on Patreon about that. And I'll be taking this to the Nova Opens, so we'll see how it fares. I just want to be part of the show and hopefully turn some heads. Every piece is an experiment, and this is something different for me. So I hope it inspires you to try to create your own explosions, or maybe add an explosion into an already idealized backdrop. Now we know how to make mushroom clouds, paint fire, do cool freehands. Yeah. So thank you for your support. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And until the next time we meet, as always, remain unchanged.